Good morning. I'm Christy Sheffy. I'm a senior home coach, and we've started having this program. This is our third month to have the longevity lab geared to seniors with our fan that comes on at the right time so we can't hear. This month, we're honored to have Steve Benton, right? Mm-hmm. I'm having a memory lapse. He is with the Senior Source, which has been around since the 60s. He is a financial expert and is going to talk to us about scams or how to scam, depending on your audience. Give you ideas. We'll know who to look out for now. But I've heard him before. He's got a packed full of information. You can take notes on the slide page there. And then he'll have question and answer at the end. And then after that, then Jasmine will be here and we'll have a little tech minute. So thank you, Steve, for being here.
All right. Well, good morning to all of you. Is my mic on? No, we got to wait. There we go. But thank you, Christy. How many of y'all are, when I talk to people in Irving, they've usually been around a long time. How many grew up here? Oh, late arrivers. That's good. My wife and I were high school sweethearts at Hillcrest High School here in Dallas. And so we've been around a long time. But anyway, back when I turned 65, a friend of mine said, "Welcome to the metallic age." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "That's when you have gold in your teeth, silver in your hair, and lead in your rear end." And I said, that fits me pretty good. So the COVID pandemic, if you will, has diminished significantly, but really the tsunami, the epidemic of financial fraud, especially against seniors, is wreaking terrible losses to that community, and it's only going to get worse. So we're getting the message out, and just heartbreaking losses and so forth. So let me give you a little background of who the Senior Source is. As mentioned, we've been around since 1961, so that was 64 years ago. And that's when the Cowboys were founded, if you've been around a while. So anyway, it's a nonprofit social services agency. It's supported by private donations, foundations, various grants that we apply for. And we have 55 employees in this nonprofit agency. That's our elevator statement. The Senior Source is the one-stop shop in the Dallas area for seniors and their loved ones to navigate aging. So we do a lot of different things. We're ombudsman for all the nursing homes and assisted living facilities here in Dallas County. And we do that for the Health and Human Services Department down in Austin. So we advocate for seniors that are in those facilities. We have a very robust caregiver support program where we help caregivers. Everybody wants to age in place at home, but it's very tiring. And I'm experiencing that myself. My wife been in and out of the hospital since December and rotating between rehab and so forth. And when she's home, I'm a caregiver. And so it is exhausting. But we also guardianship for 183 people, I think, currently, where the court has appointed the Senior Source as the guardian of seniors that can no longer make decisions for themselves. And so we have a lot of volunteer programs for people. You may be familiar with Beat the Heat. We pass out air conditioners every summer. We're going to have 3 facilities this summer where I think last year we gave away 650 air conditioners to people that didn't even have any air conditioning. And so that's kind of hard for us to imagine, but that's true to this day. Back in 2014, we formed what was called the Elder Financial Safety Center. And what this is a collaboration of the District Attorney's Office and the probate courts to investigate financial exploitation of seniors. So I'm part of that group, and I do all the intake at the Senior Source of scams and frauds and counsel people that have been defrauded or are considering making it a living like you are. And anyway, you'd see the different jobs. Of course, the Dallas County DA's office, they're in the prosecution business. And so we make referrals over to them, and they prosecute, and we've had some pretty good outcomes in that. Protection, I mentioned the probate courts and guardianship. And then finally, we're in the prevention business at the Senior Source. So we do a lot of education, a lot of financial counseling individually. We put on Money Smart for Older Adults, which is a 4-week course to discuss financial planning and all the things that you're involved in. But financial security is really the gateway issue to public safety because it determines where you can live and what you can do and so forth. So people are living longer, and we're going to talk about that. But anyway, roles of each. Our outcomes since we started in 2014, we've brought in $170 million in outcomes in savings, prosecutions, recoveries, and so forth. So it has been a very successful program. All right, let's get a little bit to the subject. And I don't know if you're a Gary Larson Far Side fan. He's my favorite cartoonist. I wish he was still in business, but he's not. He retired. And this was my favorite cartoon before I even started using it. Bummer of a birthmark, Hal. And got that target on their chest. And so why are seniors so vulnerable to financial fraud and exploitation? And why do they have a bullseye on their back or on their chest? Well, one reason is 70% of all the personal assets in the United States are owned by baby boomers and above. The last baby boomer, the youngest baby boomer, turned 60 last year. And so that means that all these assets are held in the hands of baby boomers and above. All right. And what was it that Willie Sutton said? Why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is. Okay. You've got the money and they want it. And it's at the exact same time that there's a vulnerability in declining cognitive abilities of seniors as they age. And we'll go through those stats here in a minute. And it's really unbelievable. But we, I keep saying we have trouble keeping up with technology. I mean, it's growing faster and faster, and it's tough to keep up. And I know y'all are going to have a presentation afterwards, and she's probably in a different world than the rest of us are. And she just drags us along, right? And so anyway, and then the sophistication of the con artists is just getting more and more sophisticated. They are really good at what they do, and we'll talk about a lot of the things that are going on out there. Elder scams and frauds, financial exploitation is the most underreported crime in America today because people get scammed and they're embarrassed about it. They don't report it. They don't get law enforcement involved and so forth. So it is a big, big business. And I used to put up all the stats of the billions of dollars, but in this day and age, when we talk billions and trillions, it just kind of goes over your head and you don't care, right? So, but it's big. That's all we need to know. Here's a slide that I use for financial planning when I'm teaching financial planning, but 2 slides I wanted to focus in on. Of course, one is the financial exploitation risk down at the bottom, but look at that top left-hand one, longevity. And this is called the longevity lab, right? And the reason is people are living longer, okay? I counsel people all the time, and after the session, they ask, will I outlive my money? Because they fear that more than they fear death, especially as believers in a Bible church, a good Bible teaching church. You don't fear death as much as the normal people do, but you do fear running out of money. And so they say, will I outlive my money? And I say that's a very simple equation. We've gone through all your income that's coming in, your Social Security, pensions, maybe some rental properties, oil royalties. We know what income's coming in. We know what your expenses are. We know what assets you own. Could be the equity in your home and so forth. And so we always do that 3-legged stool, of retirement income. I said there's only one part of that equation that's missing, and you know what that is? Date of death. There you go. Give that guy whatever you're giving out today. But yeah, so it's the old country saying, get all you can all you get, and sit on the lid. That's your strategy, because you may need it. But age expectancy continues to rise, and primarily it's due to advances in medical. I'm going to show you a chart in a minute, specifically in heart and cancer, in just the last 2 decades, 20 years. People are living longer, and we'll show you some of that data. And again, decline of smoking. Nobody's smoking anymore. Their focus on fitness and also on eating habits and so forth. And so people are living longer. 65, we're going to talk about, that's the fastest growing demographic out there, 65 plus. So A good example is my brother-in-law. He was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and my wife and her sister began planning his funeral. And 5 years later, he's still enjoying his grandchildren. And so did stem cell transfers and so forth. So it's not the end of the road. And here's the one I wanted to show you, the crude death rate per 100,000 of adults 65 and older. And look at that red line, which is heart, and then the cancers below it. And you look at that decline, which is very dramatic, and that's just over 20 years. That's not a long chart. And in fact, I was reading an article this morning. I forget where it was coming from, but they're really making tremendous advances in cancer and treating it. And so people are living longer. That's the bottom line. And so you've got to deal with that. And at the same time that you have declining capabilities, maybe cognitively and so forth. If you want evidence or proof, okay, of the aging process and people living longer, in just a few short years, the manufacture and distribution of diapers, of adult diapers, is going to exceed that of infant diapers. Okay, they're already ramped up for that. And so it's an aging prospect. And we're, yeah, there you go. There you go. And so you love these facts, don't you? There we go. But here's what I was talking about, the fastest growing demographic, 65 plus. You know, you always hear 10,000 Americans every day turning 65. Actually, we're in peak boomer right now, and it's 12,000 a day that are turning 65. And they're impacting everything, you know, whether it's Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and so forth. And we're an aging population, but we don't have it as bad as Japan's probably the worst. And then the Eastern European countries and Russia and others. They're paying people to have babies because you've got to have consumers. 70% of the economy in the United States is us spending our money. And you got to have consumers. And as older you get, the less you spend. You kind of hunker down and don't buy the new cars anymore and stuff like that. So you got to have a population. And we need that population to cover our Social Security. Is that correct? Okay. So I want to make sure we're all on the same page. But we are an aging nation. Of course, the baby boomers have affected everything, known as the silver tsunami. Another nickname for it is the pig and the python, the bulge, that demographic that just came out of nowhere after World War II. And they've affected everything from diapers, from school buildings, colleges, and more importantly, as I talked about, is baby boomers are consummate consumers. Okay, they love to spend money. And the best thing they think that ever happened to them was when Texas finally allowed you to get the equity out of your house and spend it. If you'll recall, we've all been around long enough that Texas was the only state that you couldn't access the equity in your home. They really believed in protecting your homestead, but once they got that passed, all of us baby boomers suddenly had our Suburbans, we had our second house in Colorado and all that stuff. So we know how to spend money, but again, we have an aging population, and we're finding more and more seniors that are woefully prepared for retirement. They have no idea what they're getting into. And so we do a lot of counseling on that. So the youngest baby boomer turned 60 last year. And this is the first demographic, interestingly enough, the baby boomers that actually reached retirement and still have mortgages. It had never happened before. Everybody usually by the time they reach 65, well, most of them didn't reach 65, but their houses were paid for. And that takes a lot of pressure off your budget. Okay, but this is the first demographic that still, a lot of them have mortgages still, and that's a problem. So at 60, what I wanted you to focus on is that number 2. At 65, the average life expectancy is to age 85. Okay, so once you reach 65, you're almost guaranteed an extra 20 years. It's better than a 50% realization of that. And 1 out of 10 will actually live to 95. So again, this longevity is going to be a problem, and we've got to deal with it. So we got to have all our money, hold on to it, and not get scammed, and so forth. And that's why I'm building that case for that. Of course, you're familiar with the generation cohorts there. And again, you know where you fit, baby boomers, silent generation, and so forth. And there's a tension that's growing that I wanted you to see between the millennials and the baby boomers, okay? And what's happening is we've been really proud of the baby boomers being the biggest demographic, but surprisingly, there are more millennials alive today than there are baby boomers. And you probably ask, why is that? Well, mortality tables don't lie. The baby boomers are dying off. And so the millennials, they call us, the baby boomers, they call us the greedy geezers. Okay. And what's that old expression is youth is wasted on the young. Theirs is wealth is wasted on the old. And so legislatively and so forth, there's going to be a lot of battles fighting to protect seniors. And that's another thing the Senior Source does very well. They advocate down in Austin for senior programs and so forth. So again, that tension is out there. How many of you know somebody that turned 100? I mean, okay, raising your hand. All right. I mean, before, who was that? Willard Scott used to make a big deal every morning about somebody that turned 100. It was so rare. It's not rare anymore. It happens a lot. She's pretty happy. You can turn 100, you can't play with Legos anymore. I don't know if you realize that. And you're saying, what are you talking about? And it's right there on the box, ages 4 to 99. And so they take away your Legos. And I was speaking out at an independent facility the other day, and they were celebrating a guy's 100th birthday in the next room before I started. And they all walked in with the cake and everything, and I was just wondering if the staff was up taking away his Legos out of his room up there. So my aunt up in McKinney, she lived to 103, and she'd wake up every morning and say, darn, I'm still here. And I told my cousin I was using that, and he says, well, you didn't get it right. She says, damn, I'm still here. And that kind of popped my bubble because she was a Sunday school teacher all of her life. But while my wife was in rehab, I'd go over there for dinner every night and sit at a table with, a bunch of her new friends. And one of them was 106 years old. And boy, she was a pistol. I mean, nothing wrong with her hearing, and she just talked and talked and talked. So she was delightful. Really was great. So anyway, so that's how we're getting older. So let's kind of get back to where we're going is what is the risk that you're facing? What's your vulnerability and so forth? Isolation is the number one risk for financial exploitation. I'm happy to see a lot of couples here today because you really got eyes on one another. To the most part, though we'll bring up some things that have happened recently that are kind of surprising. But anyway, COVID made it so much worse, but more people live alone today than ever before. Okay, 1960, only 7 million people lived by themselves. Now it's 38 million people live by themselves. And so that's a 450% increase while the population has only doubled. So people are living alone, they're isolated, they're not socially plugged in. Art did a survey the other day and found that being alone, being isolated, not plugged in socially at church, things like that, that is the equivalent on your physical health of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And so it really affects you physically. So 28% of 65 plus are what we call solo agers. We used to call them elder orphans. That was kind of a tacky term. But that's people that have chosen not to have kids, never had kids, or they're disengaged from their children. I mean, it breaks my heart. I always probe when I'm counseling somebody, okay, where's the support? Where's the family? And tell me about this daughter. Oh, I haven't talked to her in 25 years. And you're stunned. But it's out there, and it's very real. So now we call them solo agers. So a lot of them are hunkered down in their houses. They grew up in this, they built this house, and their kids went to schools. And now they've lost, they're widowed or widowers, and they're just trying to age in place, and the house is falling down around them, and it's really a struggle. But they're by themselves, and that's a big exposure. And so again, we're slowing down as we age. We're struggling to keep up. We have a saying down at the Senior Source, if you thought taking Dad's car keys away was tough, wait till you try to take away his computer, because that's become his social engine. And people don't realize that when you're on the computer interacting with people, you are letting people in the portals of your home that you wouldn't even let in the front door if you knew them, okay? And so a lot of this is that exposure to people you don't know, and we're going to be emphasizing that a lot of ways. All right, aging and finances. Here's the stats. At 1 in 10 at age 65 began to experience cognitive difficulties, okay? By the time you're 85, and you remember I said, gosh, if you reach 65, you're pretty much given another 20 years. By that time you reach 85, the stats are 1 in 3 are having cognitive difficulties. So when I'm speaking to a younger audience, in fact, I talked to the junior league the other day in a nighttime event, because no seniors come to nighttime events anymore. They're all 35, 40 years old. And I said, you better be watching your parents, and especially if they're up in their 70s later, you need to plug into them. I talked to my younger brother the other day. I was out to dinner with him and his wife, and he's got his in-laws that are 93 and 89. And I said, are y'all involved in their finances? Oh, no, they won't let us know anything. They stiff arm us. And I said, you need to walk through that stiff arm. So that's where the vulnerability is. I can't tell you how many children I've had in my office that their parents have lost everything, to scams and frauds. And we talk about what I call boomerang kids. You send them off to college and they come back and live with you. Now there's a new term, boomerang parents. And what's happening is the parents didn't plan very well. They're on Social Security. They've got a mortgage. They can't afford their house anymore. So they're having to move in with their kids just to survive. There's a lot of cases, or maybe they've lost money in scams. So it is real. And I talked to a doctor over at UT Southwestern one time, and I said, why are we seeing more of these cognitive difficulties, Alzheimer's and so forth? And he said, maybe one of the reasons is we never saw them before because they weren't around. Okay, again, that age dividend, people are living longer and they're fixing the heart and they're fixing cancer. And all of a sudden, the brain's not keeping up. And so that could be a dramatic reason that we're seeing. But anyway, the problem is with cognition becomes the risk and so forth. And so again, they're living longer. All right. What types are we talking about when we talk about elder financial exploitation? There's really two types. There's frauds and scams, and then there's financial abuse. And the difference really is the frauds and scams are usually almost entirely perpetrated upon you by a stranger. And this could be ID theft. It could be people you're talking to on the phone, texting on the internet, Facebook, or whatever. You start interacting with somebody, and there's a fraud and a scam. You will most likely never recover any of that money. It's gone. It's mostly coming from overseas, as we'll talk about a lot of this stuff. But again, why is this cognitive difficulty so, and I wanted to back up to that other screen just briefly, is all of your financial decisions are made in your frontal lobe, okay? That's where your logic resides. And so what happens is it doesn't fully mature. I think the stats are until 23 and 25 years old. Then you finally get this frontal lobe working properly, and that's why teenagers do such stupid things. They'll throw bricks off of overpasses, not thinking of the consequences or anything. But once you get to that age, then you start you have a bell curve throughout your life of good, well, it may not be good decisions, but at least they're logical. They make sense. And then toward the end, that begins to deteriorate. And it may not be dementia. It may not be Alzheimer's. It's just old age. And that's why it's very important that we watch our friends and watch our family as they age, because it definitely happens. And so getting back to this, so these frauds and scams, what's the old term, stranger danger? We used to teach our kids that seniors need to believe that. And that could be a good theme of a deal, stranger danger, because if you've never met them face to face, if you don't know them, okay, then there's a very good likelihood you're getting scammed, okay? So that's the first red flag that should go up, and it's often the first clue. And again, I've mentioned rare recoveries of these losses. That money is gone, okay? Now, on the other side, you have financial abuse, and this is family, this is caregivers, this is, quote, trusted friends, that you've got some money and they're taking advantage of you. And a lot of it could be that the elder is living in the house and he's dependent upon the family and he lets that abuse take place. And so we work very closely with Adult Protective Services and work with them on cases. Their job is to go in and make sure physically a person is not being abused, that they are in good care, that they need to be removed, do they have food in the refrigerator. They're not very good at financials, okay? So we get a lot of referrals from Adult Protective Services saying they really need somebody to come alongside them and write their checks, pay their bills, and so forth, because they don't have anybody. So, but again, family, I think 61% of my cases last year were power of attorney run amok, okay? And we're going to talk about power of attorneys in a minute, but mom's in memory care, daughter has the power of attorney, spending all of her money on herself. And see, nobody supervises power of attorneys, okay? Nobody supervises them. There's no agency that looks at power of attorneys. 90+% of them work out fine. It's trusted family members that do the right thing. But the ones that don't, okay, it's usually you don't find about it until some money's gone. And so we do a lot of counseling of getting a revocation of power of attorneys. But 61% of my cases were of that. And so you call them up and basically you say, do you realize you're committing misdemeanors and felonies when you spend the money on yourself? That is the principal's money, and you're a fiduciary. It's a higher standard, and they just think they rush to the hospital to get this paper signed, and life goes on. But you're actually signing on to being a fiduciary, which has high standards that the state enforces laws. So that's a lot of our referrals to the DA's department. Unfortunately, they don't prosecute a lot of families because what happens is grandma makes a lousy witness. They put her on the stand, and the defense comes up there and says, you don't want your grandson to go to prison, do you? Oh, no, I just want him to quit stealing my money. And the prosecutors roll their eyes because they like to win cases, okay? So they don't like those kind of witnesses. So it's got to be a dramatic, big type of situation. I'll share one with you just presently. And you got to have a mad grandma. You got to have a mad victim that's willing to send their kids or grandkids to prison, and it's very rare. But there's an 88-year-old lady over in South Oak Cliff right now, and her husband died back in 2006 and had inherited a lot of oil properties. Of course, he died intestate without a will, and so the way that happens, a third of the mineral rights go to the wife, and then 2/3 are divided up among the children. And so there was 5 kids at the time, 4 of them now. But so what happened is the wells were really not producing, the dry holes, they just had mineral rights. And so over from 2006 up to about 2020, every one of the children just got rid of them. They just needed cash. And so they sold their mineral rights and so forth. And she held on to hers, okay, the 88-year-old, and it wasn't producing anything. And so time went on, and one of the children was out with a cousin, and the cousin was just lavishly spending money like crazy. And she says, what is going on? He says, well, your mother's probably doing the same thing. We hit a big one, and it is just spewing money. And so one of the children, the oldest daughter, goes over and forges her mother's signature on the deeds, transferring the mineral rights to herself. And $750,000 to $1 million was earned by her over the next year and a half until a granddaughter visiting grandma said, what is going on here, and got us involved. And so basically when I reached out to this person, this daughter, which I do in an official letter and so forth, the next thing I know, I'm talking to a criminal defense attorney. So that's just a signal that she knew she was, her time was up. The crime had been found. And so we're negotiating right now. If she'll do this, this, and this, and give this money back, transfer the deeds back, then we won't prosecute and take her to jail. So again, those things are going out there. Families are doing crazy things. But that's the different types of elder financial exploitation. All right, we're getting through with this, okay? All right, it's resonating. Stories. I love these stories. The 5 P's of promise pirates. You get a call, there's always a problem. You'll get a text, there's a problem. Okay, that's how all these things start. Is your Social Security number's been stolen. Your account is frozen at the bank. Okay, the vast majority of those are all false. Okay, but it causes the extra heartbeat. What's going on, and so forth. And again, there's a pressure. There's something you need to do urgently to correct this problem. You got a problem in your life, and we're here to help you solve it. We just called out of the blue, or we texted you because we noticed. And a lot of times it's the person from the law enforcement that's called them. That we know that the government has people that just watch your account for you, and the minute they see something go wrong, they call you to help you, right? And the government, what was it? Reagan said that the government's not here to help you, okay? And they just don't have the ability to help, and so forth. And so anytime you start getting these things, you've won a prize. The one about winning the European lottery when they didn't even enter, the logic is gone. They're not logically thinking. Maybe they're struggling financially and they think all of a sudden I've won some money and I just have to pay taxes on it. And that's an easy entry point. They pretend to be an organization, and that could be the IRS, Social Security. They never call, as we'll talk about here shortly. And they tell you to pay in a very specific, strange way. The latest is cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, gold. They'll tell you PayPal, all these things that you may not be familiar with as a senior, rather than, can I just write you a check or something like that. So again, the bottom line is you just need to stop, take a deep breath, and say, what is going on here? Get somebody else involved. Quit going it alone. That's what's the common of this. That's what the con artists will tell you. Now, I can't help you if you tell somebody. Okay? So they isolate you, and so they don't want you to. So the message is engage family, engage friends, your church group, your social group. That's why I love that people see them out of a house that's collapsing around their head and getting into senior independent living, because it's very vibrant. You're eating meals with other seniors and so forth, and say, hey, I got this call, and everybody at the table goes, oh, it's a scam. Okay, so you're hearing another voice. But people try to fix the problem themselves. So never go it alone, and isolation is the most effective tool in that way. You may not be familiar with this. This is fairly new over the last couple of years. It's called trusted contacts. And your banks, your credit unions, and your investment houses are now wanting you to fill one of these out. And what it is you choose somebody, a trusted contact, that's in your family, friend, or whatever, that if you start acting out of character, like wiring money overseas or something like that, you are giving them permission to call and tell that person that you've chosen. And they're not going to reveal anything about your account. There's still privacy and all that. But they'll say, have you talked to your mom lately? Have you talked to your dad lately? Why? Well, she's kind of doing some things that we may believe is a scam. You need to talk to her. Okay? So this is a very effective form. Once I found out about this a couple of years ago, I have all my assets at Schwab. And so I filled out their form and I put my wife's name in there, my two sons after her. And I said, if I start doing crazy things like wiring money overseas and doing that, you're to contact her, except if it's a romance scam. I don't want you to call her about that, but anything else. Anyway, we have in Texas, we have the Texas Elder Financial Protection Act. It was a big step forward in the legislature a couple of years ago. Before, tellers, investment brokers, they couldn't stop you from doing what you wanted to do. And now they can freeze your account for 10 business days. And it doesn't make you happy if you're trying to do something, but if they suspect a scam, they can freeze your account until maybe you come to your senses or somebody plugs into you. So that has stopped a lot of things, and it's done a great job at that. But again, if you talk to your mom lately, if you've done this, again, the children are usually the last to know that mom and dad are getting scammed. And by that time, it's too late, to get there. So investment scams and frauds, everybody's familiar with Bernie Madoff, the big scammer out of New York City. He stole over $17.5 billion. Okay. I got to tell you an interesting story. In my career as an investment person, I was on a committee that out in LA when I was in Southern California. So I was put on a committee to go back to Washington, D.C. 3 times a year. And you know who was on that committee? Bernie Madoff. He was the smartest guy in the room. We were in awe of this guy. I mean, he was incredible talent, a brainiac, if you will, and we all admired him. No one, absolutely no one knew what he was doing, that he was scamming everybody, that it was a Ponzi scheme. So we had our own right here in North Texas, the money doctor. Have you all heard about him? Doc Gallagher. He was on Saturday morning radio. And audiences I speak to every once in a while, I have people say, oh, yeah, he got me for 20 grand or whatever, because he's Saturday morning radio investments. And it's what I call affinity marketing. Okay. So what he would do is he'd play the fish. Good Christian guy. And his sign off every Saturday morning was, see you at church tomorrow. And we had that in my own church. It came out of the orchestra. And this was decades ago, that he was doing treasury bill futures, and he ripped off half the choir and most of the orchestra before they finally caved in. So again, you tend to do business with people that you think you know, but you still have got to be careful. And here was Doc Gallagher playing that. So again, you can check out your broker on FINRA and find out what kind of complaints they have and so forth. I hear from women, especially all the time, but he was so nice. And I said, well, they're all nice or you wouldn't talk to them. And so they do this 24 hours a day and they're good at it. So again, we've had a lot of losses and seniors have had to go back to work just to survive and so forth. So watch out for that. All right. Who really believes a debt can be settled with iTunes card? That's payment. Again, the IRS and the Social Security, they never call you. They write letters. That's how they communicate. And I counsel one guy that's taking care of his mother, and they got a vacant house, and he's kind of waiting for her to die because the capital gains are going to be so incredible in Highland Park on this house. And so he just sits there empty, and he just doesn't bother checking the mail often enough, and about every 3 months, and all of a sudden her Social Security dropped in half because they weren't responding to the Social Security letter because there were some requirements they were supposed to report to the Social Security. And he just got so mad and all that. And I said, well, get mad at yourself. Open your letters. That's how they communicate. But anyway, let me tell you a story about a Mesquite woman. This was right the summer of COVID, 2020. And she's 93 years old, had never married, no kids, pretty well off, lived in a house in Mesquite. And so she got awakened at 7:30 in the morning by the phone. How many of you sleep till 7:30 in the morning nowadays? I don't. But anyway, she was still asleep, wasn't paying too much attention, and as a law enforcement officer from the U.S. Treasury, that her Social Security number had been stolen. And that, got her heart beating. And he says that Social Security number was used to rent a car. How many of you have rented a car with your Social Security number? No, so she's not thinking clearly. And it was driven to Austin. It was used in a drug deal that went bad, and somebody was murdered. And so, she's sitting there panicking. Is she culpable somehow that her Social Security number was used in that? And so he says, well, I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to give you a new Social Security number. We're with the U.S. Treasury Department. We can do that. And we're going to move your money because you're at risk at the bank, and we're going to move it over to your new account that we set up for you. And so she proceeded over the next 6 months to box up in Federal Express boxes money she had withdrawn at the bank and ship it off to these addresses. And so she didn't tell anybody. If you can tell anybody, we can't help you. There it is. And so finally, a great niece, she shared with her, and the great niece called me the next day. I got out there with the Mesquite detective. We were all gowned up and masked up and met her in the front yard, and she was mad as could be. Not that she was being scammed, but that we had found out about it. And she was mad at her great niece, and it took us about 6 more weeks to convince her she was being scammed, and we saved her last $123,000. But so that gets recorded as an outcome. But again, she was going it alone, trying to solve the problem, not thinking clearly, didn't involve anybody else. Okay, so that's a good message there. And here is Art put this out: reactivate my Social Security benefits with a gift card. Oh, really? So again, don't do that. All right. So I always use this. Remember the old middle school, I say gift card, you say scam? I've had some big audiences like the Carrollton Women's Club, about 100 women. The really wild one was the retired teachers of the Carrollton Farmers Branch ISD alumni. And it was on Halloween. They were all dressed up, and we all had to do the Monster Mash, and they're just crazy people. But so I always, with the big crowds, and I'll do it with you just to wake you up. When I say gift card, you say scam. Now louder. I say gift card, you say scam. It's always a scam, okay? Gift cards are not the way to settle any type of transaction whatsoever. So let's talk about telephone and texting now. Telephone, we pretty much solved that problem, okay? It's been going on for a while. You need to let everything roll to voicemail or to an answering machine. 90% of all con artists will hang up because they want to talk to a live person. They know they can fool you. They hate voicemail, and most of them will hang up. So the only ones that you're getting on there are people that are persisting, and you really got to see, all right, who is this person? What are they telling me? And again, it's Social Security been stolen, your bank account's been frozen. Get the card out of your wallet, call the bank direct, and there you go. don't ever, ever return a phone call to a person that you don't know, and certainly not a text, as we're going to talk about. So again, there it is. Never click on text links, and we'll make that very effective here shortly. Again, 90% hang up. So here's the data. It's just stunning numbers. Remember when you first got your iPhone? Nobody knew your phone number. I mean, nobody had it. Okay, you gave it to your friends and your family. Now everybody has your phone number. Okay, I always get the question, what about the dark? Okay, they have everything. Okay, there's nothing private. If you think that your stuff hadn't been stolen, it's there. You saw AT&T get hacked. All these people get hacked, and they do their CYA letter. Oh, we'll let you have LifeLock for a year or something like that, because they're just guilty of letting your information get out there. So it's all out there in the dark web. So you've got to protect yourself. That's the bottom line that I've learned lately, is you just got to assume that somebody has your social security number. And so you've got to start doing some things to protect yourself. So texting has now become the scammer's primary entry point, all right, to get to your data and to get to you and your money. And so another story here. This is an 85-year-old gentleman. He went to the Air Force Academy, graduated, flew fighter jets in Vietnam, and came back and was an American Airlines pilot for 30 years. And he was the caregiver for his wife. He'd been married all of his adult life. She was going downhill, so he took care of her for 7 years. And now he's 85 years old. She's been dead for 8 more years. And he's living in an apartment up in McKinney, and he gets a text from the Geek Squad. Everybody know what the Geek Squad is? All right. Well, it's not from the Geek Squad, but it says your 2-year plan is up for renewal. We're going to be hitting your bank account unless we hear back from you. So what does he do? He clicks on the text and begins interacting with the con artist. And as he interacts, it finds out you've been scammed. I'm going to turn you over to somebody else that can help you. And it's a law enforcement officer from the Federal Reserve Bank. And of course, he's a proper military guy. He's followed orders all his life. Now he's talking to this guy that has been personally assigned to his account to help him through this crisis. And so over a very short period of time, he was groomed to liquidate all of his American funds, okay, $545,000, wired into a money center bank here in Dallas. And he proceeded, as ordered, to withdraw money in average $16,000 withdrawals, $100 bills, all right? Y'all do that all the time, right? I mean, a lot of people don't realize when you get more than $10,000, the $10,000 comes in a nice little plastic bundle. I do it all the time. It's really fun. No. But so he's this 85-year-old guy, and money's just being shoved across the teller window, okay? And only one teller said, do you really know what you're doing? He said, oh, yeah, I'm fine, because what had he been told? If you tell anybody, we can't help you anymore. And so he proceeded then, as ordered, to go to Walmart, buy thermoses, wrap the money in foil, put it in the thermos, and ship it all over the United States until every single penny was gone, okay? And then the guy didn't answer the phone anymore. But he lost it all, didn't tell anybody, finally told his daughter and her husband, and that's who called us and got involved with him. But so the money's gone. I mean, it is never going to be recovered. But does the bank have culpability there? And we think they do. We're trying to get a class action going against them. They should have, as required, contact Adult Protective Services when they suspect a scam, all right? An 85-year-old guy withdrawing that kind of money. And also they had the Texas Elder Protection Act. They could have frozen his account for 10 business days. And so that's just a huge loss. And so if you're scared about anything, don't ever call and don't ever click, okay? Don't ever click anything, all right? Get somebody else involved if you're truly scared. Now, take a look at this. So you say, okay, they say my Amazon account is frozen. I'll just go on the website and make sure I'm clear, all right? And so if you see Amazon.com, you say, oh, I'm going to their website because I know what it looks like. Well, one of those is real and one of them's a con artist. Can you tell the difference? You probably can't, okay? But what it is the top one is a fraud. See that little A? That's what's called the Cyrillic alphabet. And so that A looks just like the regular A, in the Amazon. And so if you thought you were going, if they put that contact Amazon.com, you thought you were safe in going to their website. So again, you can't trust anything anymore. And that's why I always come to this point. You remember Ronald Reagan during the Cold War, trust but verify, trust but verify. Well, I've got news for you. In this age of technology, you need to distrust everything. Distrust everybody. Don't click on anything. Don't return phone calls. Share with other people, okay? Because they are getting so good at this. Only go directly to your provider to verify or validate. Don't click. Yes, sir.
So with that rule, one of the things I've become very concerned about recently is, one of my good friends said the only reason you retire so you can go to all your doctor's appointments. That's really true.
You talking about the meals, or is that what I heard?
Going to your doctor's appointments.
Oh, doctor's appointments, yeah.
So what I've been concerned about recently is all these doctors now have these portals, and they want you to pre-sign in.
Oh, yeah.
And they send you a bizarre number of text messages, just overwhelming. And you think it's coming from the doctor's office. Probably is, but that you effectively do click on. I mean, because you go into the portal, and then you give a huge amount of personal information in these portals. I am wondering if you're seeing that as an upcoming, that just seems right to me.
Yeah, it would be if they knew who your doctor was, and I by personal experience, I tell you what, I've been going through doctors' things, for my wife and everything, and it's one of the things I tell people is simplify your life as you get older. You don't need 3 bank accounts. You just need. There's only one. Simplicity. At the same time, my doctor portals are going like this. And I mean, I see what the problem is, because everybody wants you to come through their portal. And it works great for my personal physician. I mean, I've used it for years. He communicates immediately back to me, and I love it. But when I'm doing one procedure with one doctor, and he's in a different system, why do I want to get in a portal? And just
So it's not your personal physician, it's responding.
Right.
That's the concern.
Yeah. So again, you got to look at where it's coming from, and is it really them? So, and if you have any question, just call them up and say, I just got this. Is this from you?
My rule now is that I don't fill it out at all.
You go to the,
Spend an extra 15 minutes at the office.
right. But I hate filling out paperwork in the doctor's office. But anyway, okay. Now we have artificial intelligence. That's a big problem. They're imitating the voice. They can hear your voice and then put all this voice to you. They can do a picture. And so forth. And of course, you saw that raft of granddaughters been kidnapped and all of that stuff, and people sending money and so forth. And again, what I always encourage people is to have a family password. And it comes from the grandparents to the parents to the children. They all know what our family password is. And maybe it's peacock or popcorn. And so if somebody calls you and it sounds like your grandson, sounds like your granddaughter, all you got to say is, what's the password? What's the family password? Okay? And the con artists don't have it. You shouldn't have been answering the phone to begin with. But anyway, so that's there. So again, stop, take a deep breath. Do not go it alone. Engage family and friends. How many of you are aware that there are Bitcoin ATM machines in DFW? You can now go into any sorts of convenience stores and buy Bitcoin. Everybody gets excited about Bitcoin and so forth. And you probably saw the white settlement case about a year ago, where a lady was at a convenience store out there, had her phone to the ear, and she was being instructed on to do something. Guy came up and said, are you sure you're not being scammed? And so what was her reaction to that? Go away. I'm busy right now. I can't talk to anybody. Because the guy says, don't let anybody interrupt you. The banks are, bad guys and so forth. And so anyway, he called the police. And the white settlement officers came and stopped her, and she saved $23,000 that she was feeding into the machine and was getting ready to give him the Bitcoin URL. Okay? So again, it's just diabolical about what's happening. I even had a lady over in Carrollton the other day, $4,000, that she had gotten scammed by going to an ATM machine and giving up that money. Okay, let's get into some of the specifics. Romance scams, they've been around a long time. They've been very profitable. It's the long game. It's usually aimed at women 60 to 75 that are widowed, divorced, or single, that just one last chance of romance. And so all of a sudden, they're texting and interacting with a soldier coming back from Afghanistan, coming back from Iraq, was previous decade and so forth. Now it's the North Sea oil rigs where you have a mechanical engineer on board or whatever, and engineer. And so they text back and forth, and you see what's going on. They're being catfished. It's a persona that is being set up there. And they even have their own websites and so forth, Facebook. But once you get involved with one of these things, people will tell you this is not real. The family will tell you that. Your attorney will tell you that. Nobody can convince you because you're in love. And we've had clients that have sold their houses waiting on this guy to come back, and they're going to buy a house together. And of course, they're shipping money overseas. It's very much a long game, and there's the bottom line. They always eventually ask for money. Yes, ma'am.
So, being single and you've got a girlfriend, how do you, I don't know if she is or not, she met this guy online about the time COVID did, and then he went to Germany, and then they'll say you can't come back because I can't get back to this kind of stuff.
Right.
I don't know if she's giving me money or not, and I don't know how to ask.
You just ask her, because everybody's going to challenge her, and she just won't believe it because she's in love. And if it's been going on that long for 5 years and there's no physical contact, I mean, why even have a relationship? Okay. And so anyway, it's just they never come. They say, okay, I'm flying in Friday night, and they never show up. Oh, that flight got canceled. But they always ask for money. There's always some reason. And when I was on Dr. Phil's show, they had it on romance scams. And basically, this woman still believed this guy was real. And the producers at Dr. Phil had actually found the guy in the picture that was being proposed. And so he was a psychologist in Kentucky. They flew him in. So halfway through the show, all of a sudden, they walk him in and sit him down in front of her. And she was stunned because that's who she thought she was talking to. And she's talking to a Nigerian, or texting to a Nigerian. And see, in this day of Skype and FaceTime, there is no excuse for not having a visual of a person. But they always have an excuse, okay? So it's really easy, but the problem is I've had ladies sit in front of me that they say, I know it's a scam, I won't send them any more money, but then they leave my office, go buy a gift card, okay? They won't let go. They really won't. And so how romance scams can start on Facebook, this is an article that I wrote about 2 years ago. And so how many of you are in the Happy Birthday Club? One of your friends on Facebook has a birthday, and all the friends say, happy birthday, and I'm always jealous because my friends never wish me a happy birthday because they don't know my birthday. I don't put it out there. And so anyway, there's a guy that's hacked in there, and he's watching all this, and he sees your 28 friends wishing you a happy birthday. And so basically he starts corresponding with you through Facebook saying, oh, I love your postings. Let's be friends and all of this stuff. And so here's the happy birthday trick, and here's his picture. And so it only takes one of those 28 women that's lonely to click on, and he's got a big win, okay? So he's a winner, all right? And so, again, it's William Johnson Clark, good American name and so forth. So you can reverse Google any picture, and there it is. He's actually the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, okay? So anyway, that was one of ours. Here's the big one, pig butchering. Everybody heard that term before? This is the latest and greatest. It's coming out of Asia, and it is romance scams on steroids, but it's also got greed involved because what happens, that interaction starts, and it's usually an Asian woman that's being portrayed, and it's targeted in men that are retired, have a nice 401k and so forth. They began talking, and she's showing him pictures of her sitting on a yacht, in nice surroundings and so forth. How'd you make your money? Cryptocurrency trading. And the next thing you know, he's sending $10,000 and he gets 15, 20% return. So he sends more money, and because they're trading, it's trading strategies. And it's a false template on real trading platforms. And this is big. I mean, we had 3 cases in my office last year that were over $1 million lost. Okay, and I won't get into all the details, but it turns into a lot of greed also because you're making so much money. The saddest one was 3 daughters came to me and said that they could not stop their father, who was in love with this 35-year-old Asian woman. He was 70, okay, and they could not convince him that it was not real. And he said, well, look at all the money I'm making. And his first $1 million had turned into $60 million. And then he sold his $3 million worth of apartments that he owned, and he felt he was worth $700 million. And so what do we say about the frontal vortex? It was gone. And he was losing all this. He flew to New York to meet her. And of course, she wasn't there. The daughters had to go and retrieve him and brought him home. And he was trying to wire his last $100,000. And actually, the Secret Service called me because I had spoken at a Secret Service conference. And they said, I've got a case, da-da-da-da. And I said, oh, that's the same case. I know what you're talking about. And he says, well, we've got an appointment to go visit the guy on Friday night. What should we say? And so I gave them all the stuff, and they failed. I mean, nobody could penetrate this guy. I mean, he truly believed he's worth $600 million and was in love. So those are the big ones. And I had a couple early. This was 5 years ago when I couldn't even spell crypto. I mean, I grew up in the securities business. That was my whole career. And I still don't understand cryptocurrency, all right? And I did buy some the other day, and I did in an ETF, now that's regulated by the SEC. And so I threw a little money at it, but it's with the gold and silver bucket, okay? Never more than 5-10% of my portfolio. And so this couple called, and the wife just said, you know what crypto is? And I go, no. And says, nobody knows. I've called the police, I've called this. And I said, well, what's the problem? She says, well, we put our entire retirement savings in cryptocurrency, and it's gone. We don't know where it went. And totally gone. And I said, you put 100% of your retirement funds in a non-regulated wild, wild west. And I didn't even know what it was back then. But she slammed down the phone. And so I told my wife about it, who's an RN, worked in hospitals for years. And she says, yep, you can't fix stupid, but I can sedate it. And that was her response. So, again, other scams, the grandson imposter scams in jail down in Costa Rica, needs bail. That one's pretty much died. And the reason is that, did you really? But you sent the money anyway, right? Right. But the Walmarts, the Western Union, the Krogers, any 65-year-old grandma that walks in and wants to wire funds overseas for bail, they say, you're being scammed. And she starts crying and so forth. You got to send this money. You don't understand. Billy is in trouble. And have you talked to his parents? No, he told me not to call mom and dad. There you go, the isolation and everything. And so they refuse to do it. And you say, well, aren't these stores great? That's a big money maker, and they're quitting doing it. Well, the reason is they got a $5 million class action filed against them. So now they won't do anything. And if you notice, I said grandma. If you call grandpa, what does grandpa say to the grandson? Well, it's your mess, figure it out. Whereas grandma goes crying to the bank and withdraws some money. I'm being real sexist about that, but anyway. Other things, we'll wrap up. I'm running a little bit over. We started a little late. But the lottery, we've talked about. The tech support scam, that's big. How many of you had your computer just all of a sudden, light up? You're been invaded by a Trojan, oh, there you are. You had that? And you can't do anything. It said, call Microsoft immediately. Here's the number. And so you dial the number, and guess what? They answered on the first ring. How many of you called a technology company and didn't have to go through a 15-step deal to find a live person? They picked up on the first ring. And so once they take over your computer, they say, oh, they're getting into your Chase account. Call Chase Fraud right now. Here's the number. And you dial that number, and it's the cubicle next to the guy over in India or wherever it is. Okay? So we've had some disastrous cases in that amount. And so what I have found, and it's happened to me 2 or 3 times, where the computer goes crazy, and all you do is turn your computer off. Okay? Well, that doesn't work anymore. It happened to me in the office the other day, and so I said, well, all I got to do is turn it off, and it wouldn't let me turn it off my computer. And so I reach out to some young guy, come over here and help me, and he says, well, just exit your internet, your access. And so I did that, and went away. So that's the next step. So they won't let you turn your computer off now.
In the last case, pull the plug.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, it's a hard shutdown, but it still works.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so those are the things. We won't cut it. Watch out for grants for seniors. If somebody's hacked into your friends on your email, your good friends, and all of a sudden you get one from Betty or one of your good friends who maybe lives in Colorado. She said, have you heard about the new senior grants that are coming out of the government? You can get money. And she said, I just got $4,200. So here's a testimony from your friend. Okay, is it really your friend? You don't take time. You don't take time to call her and ask her about it or congratulate her. You click on the deal. And it's the U.S. government, and they say, we have this grant. We need your Social Security number. Well, they're the U.S. government. They need my Social Security number if they're going to send me money. So, again, a lot of people fall in for that one. So, sword or shield, the power of attorneys, I promised to talk about those. You really got to be careful with those. A lot of my cases are power of attorneys run amok. And it's, I'll tell you, the worst case, and it was right after we started, this guy never had any kids. So what do we call him? Not an elder orphan. We call him a solo ager. And so he says, I've got to go through 3 surgeries, and hospital to rehab, back to hospital, rehab, back to the hospital, then I'll be done after that 3rd rehab. And so he said, who's going to pay my bills? Who's going to mow my grass? Who's going to take care of my house? Who's going to feed my dog? And so he reaches out to a nephew and gives him a full, general, durable financial power of attorney. When he got out after 3 months, his house was gone. All of his investments were gone. Nobody knows where the dog is, nor the nephew. So he lost it all. Stunning, stunning story, but a true story. Again, inheritance hijacking has become big. We talked about, people that you know, like the caregiver. Maybe he's the last person taking care of great-grandpa. And basically, that family just ignores me anyway. I'm going to leave you my house. I'm going to leave you this. And so you have a lot of caregiver inheritance hijacking. And so there's the definition. It's in your slides. This is my favorite slide as we close, and it's Texas unclaimed property. Remember the Dallas Morning News used to print this out once a year? Now it's on the internet. There it is, claimittexas.gov. That's the real thing. And so we put all of our clients through that filter, and we have a 20% hit rate. That means 1 out of 5 people have money at the state of Texas. This is called a process of achievement. Is if a corporation, an account cannot find you, they can't hold on to your money. They have to send it to the state. And the state doesn't want it. They want you to have it. And so you go on there and you find your money, okay? And that group that I was talking about earlier, the big one on Halloween, big crowd. And as I'm doing this, of course, they're all bright people. And all of a sudden this lady jumps up and goes, bingo, she found $200, right in the middle of my talk, okay? And so I've had that happen. But you need to go on there and constantly go on there because you never know, there's more money that might come in there. My biggest deal is $350,000, and that was 3 sisters. One of them was my client, her 2 sisters in San Diego, and it was big, and sure enough, we had to go through probate court, reopen a probate. They were the last known relatives that they could never find, and they got their money. And so everybody gets excited. And so if you're looking for a hobby, if you're bored, start putting your pastor's name in there, put your friends in there. I guarantee you'll hit some, and you can call them up and say, I found you $161, you owe me a steak dinner. And so, but anyway, try it out. It's a good hobby. So with that, I'll open it up for questions, if there are any. Oh, he's already checking them out. No, he's calling somebody. Yes, sir.
Is there any website that you're aware of where by the time we reach our age, the chances are that we've signed up for various small accounts someplace, credit union someplace in our life, we forgot about it. We don't even know about it anymore.
Well, if they're unable to get that information to you, they have to turn it over to the state. That's where a lot of this money comes from.
That's in Texas, right?
Yeah, well, no, it's nationwide, and there's actually a nationwide website. I need to start putting that on there because people move here from Florida, and there's one place you can go now, and it covers all 50 states. Now, all the Secretary of States or whoever's responsible got together and put this website together.
What should I Google to find that site?
Just start with unclaimed funds, and you'll find it. I'll start putting it on there. That's a good idea. Yeah, especially if you've moved from out of town. I was out in Southern California for a decade, and so I certainly checked out there. Okay. Anything else? Any questions? All right. Hopefully that was entertaining and factual and will help you. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have you again because it's ever changing, and next year there'll be some new scam.
But then I have to have new jokes. So
Well,
there you go.
It's okay.
Or they won't even remember them, right?
That's true. They may not remember the joke. So thank you for coming. Next is Jasmine. She's going to give us our tech update. And so come on up, dear.
That's the infamous Jasmine.
That's the infamous Jasmine.
That knows more than all of us. Let me get out of the way, okay?
I've got it.
Are you going to do any screen or are you just going to talk? All right, I'm going to unplug this. We'll go dark. All right.
I'll let you click that one and okay.
Sure. Keep the microphone?
Sure.
Okay.
Just don't wear it to the John.
Hi, everybody. Okay. So my name is Jasmine Skinner, and I'm excited to be here with y'all again. So I manage Talon Crest Technology, and we help older adults stay safe online. So it was great learning from Steve today, and there were some scams that I hadn't even heard of. So I learned along with y'all today. And so to follow up with what you all learned with Steve, I have a Spot the Scam quiz for y'all. So it's a quick little quiz. Hopefully it's fun and, gets everybody talking. And so I have this for everybody. It's just 7 questions, so it's really short. So we can go through this together. Oh. Okay. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. That's okay. Oh, here you go. You're welcome. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Here you go. Oh, thank you, sir. Okay. So you can take a few minutes and start the quiz, and then we'll go over the answers together. Does that sound good? And then while y'all are doing that, Steve, I have a question for you.
Okay, I knew somebody did.
So I've recently heard about shipping companies like UPS or FedEx starting to charge customers like the tariff tax that they're getting charged. But I recently spoke with some older adults, and I was like, you'll never get charged for any tariffs or anything, so don't worry about that. But that's happening. They're starting to push it back off on, consumers. So I was curious if you've come across any tariff scams or anything like that.
Well, it's like the COVID restaurant. They're putting on this extra charge just for you eating there.
Right.
Yeah, just so they could make money. So
Gotcha.
You got to fight everything that's on there. I mean, we all fight our cable bills, right? All day.
Yeah.
No, we don't. We just pay them every month.
Okay.
How many have cut cable and don't do cable anymore at all? We did that recently. It's an adventure.
Yeah.
Right? Stream everything. Okay. That's a good
Gotcha.
question.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Steve. So according to Steve, and I agree, if you get anything from UPS, if you're shopping online, or if you have a grandchild or a family member that's shopping online and they get that from them, I would say fight it or ignore it. But they're starting to push back and pass off those expenses to the consumer. They shouldn't be doing that. They will try. They shouldn't be doing that. They should be paying for that. But if people don't know that, and then they'll pay for it. Yes, ma'am.
So you could refuse to pay for it if they
I would, yeah. So some of them are scams. So that's the tricky part. Some of them are scams, but then also the companies like UPS and FedEx, they are starting to charge people the tariffs that they don't want to pay. So
what do you do in that case?
I would say, you could call them and verify that it's real. Obviously contest it and see I shouldn't have to pay this. But I wouldn't just go off and pay anything immediately. Definitely don't do that, as we learned from Steve. So yeah. Yes, Christy.
Well, according to the news, they came to some kind of settlement yesterday on the tariffs with China. So hopefully that'll
Okay. Yes.
China down to 55%.
Uh-huh.
We're at 10% of whatever it is.
Yes, so obviously it's constantly in flux, but unfortunately we don't know when this is going to end. Hopefully it ends soon, and then you don't have to worry about it. But yeah, just FYI, that's something I recently learned about. Okay, is everyone ready to go through the quiz? Okay, so first question. You get a phone call from someone claiming to be your bank. They ask you to confirm your account number and password. What should you do? A, B, or C? All right, good job, y'all. Hang up and call your bank using the number on your bank card. Don't ask them to email you, and don't give them any information like we learned from Steve. So real banks will never call and ask you for your account number or password. Always hang up and call the official number to check to make sure it's real. Okay, number 2. You receive an email that says you've won a prize, but you need to pay a small fee to claim it. What's your best move? See? No, unfortunately, you don't want to forward it to your friends, but B is correct. Ignore the email and delete it. If you want to treat your friends, invite them out to dinner or for ice cream since it's getting hot or something. If you must pay to claim a prize, it's a scam. Ignore or delete the emails and never share your information. Okay, number 3. A pop-up appears on your computer warning you about a virus and tells you to call a number for help. What should you do? Good job. B, close the pop-up and run your antivirus software. Or as we talked about earlier, you can just turn the computer off altogether, try to shut it down, or click out of the browser. So you never want to engage with the pop-up. And pop-ups like these are often scams. Okay, number 4. Someone on social media you don't know sends you a message asking for money because they're in trouble. What's your safest action? B, ignore the message and block the sender. Don't ask them for more details. You don't need to engage with them or try to trick them up. Just ignore it and block them. Scammers often pretend to be in trouble to get money. Don't reply, just ignore them. Number 5, you get an email from a company you use, but the sender's address looks strange, like in the example where you see support at Amazon, but the O is a number 0 and there's a dash / customers. What should you do? B, good job, y'all. Delete the email. It's probably fake. Scammers use fake email addresses that look similar to real ones. Okay, true, false. It's safe to give your social security number to anyone who asks for it over the phone. Good job. Y'all are pros at this. Never give your social security number over the phone unless you are sure who you are talking to. Scammers often ask for it to steal your identity. Okay. Next one. If a website's address starts with https://, it is always 100% safe to enter your personal information. True or false?
False.
Ooh, good job, y'all. Just because it has HTTPS, the connection is secure, so that's good, but scammers can still create fake sites. And always double check that the website's address is correct and look for signs that it's legitimate. So that's a tricky one for sure because, there was all the information of, okay, don't go to websites if it doesn't have HTTPS. And so now we know to do that, but they can still create legitimate websites that are trying to scam you. So that's a little tricky. Okay, and last one. Scammers can use caller ID to make it look like they're calling from a trusted company or even a family member. Oh wait, I think I missed something up there. Should you answer that phone call? True or false? Good job. Yes, true. Scammers can spoof caller ID to show any name or number. Always be cautious even if the call looks familiar. All right. Well, how did y'all do? Good? All right. Well, there on the last page, I wanted to let you all know that in the month of July, we will have a free tech help hosted here on Mondays at CUPPA. And so if you're interested, bring your device that you need help with or bring your questions. You can sign up at the QR code there. So that's Mondays in July. All right. Well, thank you all for having me.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Sharon is handing out the lab report. So if you've got some ideas or comments or anything, please fill that out and then leave it up the desk or the front table. Next month, we get Jasmine for the whole time. So she's getting all ready for that, and we will have all kinds of fun tech stuff. I don't have any idea. You know I don't know enough about that. This is why we have a millennial. Come teach us tech stuff. And so looking forward to that. And thank you guys. We have a Facebook page. It looks just like the little people at the top. If you want to get on there, we're recording it here, and then we will have it up by maybe tonight to this site, because I have to do it on a different page. But we'll have the recordings most months. I post stuff every now and then. Other people post things. I've got a couple of books in there that are interesting, and if I see an interesting article, then I'll post it in there also. So join a Facebook page and contribute to that, and we'll be a community. So thank you guys. I'm Christy, Senior Home Coach. If you need anything, give me a buzz.